All right, so who's a Dallas fan? Anybody here? If you're a Dallas fan in the chat, nah, we're gonna kick your asses this weekend. Sorry.
I love it. I love it.
If you know what? If you're going to make an entrance, make an entrance. I told my son,
that's right.
I said,
I think you got to tell them the city of brotherly love is really more like Cain and Abel style.
oh, there we go. It's all in. It's all in. I told my sons, I said, if you really want to ask a girl out and you think she's like cute, and he actually did it. She was in a nail salon and he left, came back with flowers, paid for her nails and all that stuff, and came up and said, you don't know me, but you're going to have to find out who I am. But I think you're absolutely adorable, and left. She found him.
Nice.
He found him. But if you're going to make a scene. You want to get somebody's attention, make a scene, right?
Very smart.
Good. I love it. I
kind of had fun with that the other day. We were in an area. We walked into a real estate office, said, who wants to leave? And they looked like, what? I said, who wants to leave? They're like, were you in here trying to recruit us? So I said, no, I just wanted to see who wanted to go to lunch. Maybe I'll recruit you, but who wanted to leave and go to lunch? It was funny as hell, just having fun. Everybody's face is like, huh?
Well, Craig, we're going to talk today a little bit about prospecting. And when I teach a prospecting school, one of the things that I do is there's a crowd and I say, okay, stand up if you're married. And about always half the room stands up. And then I say, okay, you sit down. Half the room, if you're single, stand up. And they stand up. And I go, you guys need to learn how to prospect better. Like, do you want me, period, not to sell your home, right? So you're teaching your son how to prospect really good. That's awesome, Craig.
Yeah, guess what? It works. It works. It's just a matter of no's. Enough no's will get you to yes. Remember the book, Go for No. Go for no. It's just a numbers game. Bankin has it on his arm. Math versus drama. Love that. Life is physics. The whole thing is physics. Every action is a reaction. Mm-hmm. Everything else is just noise and drama. And I self-talk.
Yeah, we love the drama, though, don't we? But anyways, you guys, so today, some of us do, it seems. But today we're going to be talking about objection handlers, right? Let's get it rolling. I know we're here 5 minutes. I know we got quite a few people in the room. So let's get talking about some objection handlers that we're working on. We got some absolute just dynamos here. David Lawson, Park City, Brian Yarborough there, Craig, Karina. You guys are all talking with agents. You're talking with clients. You're out there. You're hearing what's going on. So let's break that down a little bit. Who wants to start off first? Does anyone want to raise their hand and start off first on some of the scripts, some of the objection handlers that they're been working with?
Cam, I think you're going to have to pick someone. Okay, good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I actually took the time yesterday to sit down and make some notes. So this is going to be a little, up and down and around the corner stuff, but I'm going to go through my notes real quick because I love this. I had a mentor for 5 years in the luxury market, and we tested great objection handling scripts to do just several things with them. What we learned, number one, that most client objections stem from two areas. Either an area from fear of the unknown, that's your first-time home buyers, or because they've had a bad experience and they say they'll never do that again, which is your experience second or third time around the block kind of clients, right? So when you study the fear of the first-time home buyer, what we learned is a lot of times those are just like mom or dad or Uncle Joe gave them advice. Oh, you're going to look for a house. Well, don't buy one with a bad roof because you don't want a leaky roof, right? They put fear in the client. So when they come into open houses, when they come into your environment, they're preset to look for certain things and ask certain questions. It's interesting, if you work with a lot of buyers and you show a lot of property, you'll notice that your buyers a lot of times will have the same objection home after home after home. Like, well, how old are the windows? Or is the foundation good? Or, what's the HOA fee or whatever? So their fears are valid, and you have to get good at this, right? So one way to handle a lot of the objections is by setting up your consultation to answer a lot of those objections before they become an objection. Tony Robbins used to say, kill the monster before it kills you. So the objection might be, I found the perfect home. It's just not in the location that you really want it in. But if you want to go look at this house, it's not right where you want it, but it's like the perfect house, but it's a little further out. Would you like to go see something a little further out? Like, let them handle the objection that you already know is going to be an objection because the location or whatever. Okay. So here's, and I wrote this note. So by far the best objection handling script I ever learned was one that allowed me to hear the objection, ask them two very important questions when you hear that objection. And these are the two questions. So imagine you're in an open house working with a buyer objection right now. Somebody walks in and says, hey, do they have problems with wildfires in this area or flooding, or, in Florida, it's going to be hot. Has this ever been in a hurricane? Is there ever, whatever the objection is. The first thing you say is, well, let me ask you, how important is that objection right now? Like, how important is this? Because if they're just walking into your open house and they're going to take time to talk to you and they throw out an objection, you could answer it. Let's just say it's about how old is the roof or how old are the windows. And if you just answer that question, you won't know how important it was. And so what you've done is you train them to ask you questions, and you're going to have to answer them. And eventually you're going to get to a point maybe where you don't know the answer. So it's easier to say, well, that's a great question. How important is that? Because what I want to learn is that if it's really important, or if it's just because your dad told you don't buy a house with bad windows, that does happen. And then, is there anything else that I should ask the seller? So I'm going to take a note. I was trained to, when I hear an objection, write it down right in front of them. And they'll go, what are you doing? I'm taking notes. I'm going to find out how important these things are, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the seller or the lender or the title, whoever, the HOA company, whenever an objection is given to you, the thing you want to be able to do is get really skilled at hearing it and then giving it back to them. Because when you hear it and you say, oh, okay, your concern is, are large dogs allowed in the HOA? What else is going to be really important for me to ask the HOA people for you? Because when they give me that, I need to find out what's holding them back from buying this house. They might just be looky-loos, and they just might say, oh, we're just curious. Okay, now how important was it? Right? So I don't have to really go after it. I just have to understand it. But here's what I'm getting at, you guys. When you're in a luxury property and a doctor walks in and he asks you two or three very specific objection scripts, you need to be able to say, great, what else would be important for me to ask the seller why I have them? Because I'm going to get the answers, and then I'm going to follow up with you. And what's going to be the best way or easiest way for me to follow up with you? And you get quiet. Because the whole goal of the objection is to use it to get valid information to follow up with. If we just answer objections all the time because we know the answers, we're never going to be able to actually build a relationship with them by using the objections to build that relationship with you. Does that make sense? Okay, so when you confirm and you heard the objection and you're asking how important is that, it's going to determine the speed and the accuracy of the objection and how fast you need to follow up with them. Because they might say something like, well, this is the only house in the neighborhood. We're just concerned with this, this, and this, but we're really, we're excited about this property, but we would like to know. Great, I'm going to speed and accuracy. But if they're just random looky-loos and they come in and they just throw out some objections just to sound like, I'm going to use the objection to get valid feedback information. Okay, that's one. Door knocking, internet leads, open houses, that's all that. Once you hear and identify the objection, you want to close quickly with what is the easiest way for me to follow up with you. That's how you get real information. You don't ask for an email. You don't ask for a cell phone. Here's why. If you're talking to a CEO or a doctor or somebody and you ask them for what's the easiest way for me to follow up with you, they're going to tell you. But if they tell you, be ready to write down what they said. Because if you say, well, what can I text you? And they're a doctor, they don't respond to text. You're going to get their gatekeeper. You don't want to get somebody's gatekeeper. Objection handling scripts get you back to the person who really wants to know the answer to the objection. We studied and studied and studied it, and I can tell you our lead conversion went through the roof when we understood that the objection was the #1 way for us to get valid lead information to get back to them. Okay. So when you ask them, you know, those questions, there's another objection handling script I wrote down. They're the #1 way to build trust, loyalty with someone who uses the objection actually to do themselves a disservice. So some of these people, these buyers and even sellers, are doing themselves a disservice by giving you an objection that is trying to, well, you know, as with a seller objection, it's going to be, you know, I've had a couple other people come through here, and you know, I'm really looking for an agent that's going to give me the turnkey A+, but they're all willing to do it, it seems like, for a 2% commission in this marketplace right now. Okay. You have to know how to handle that objection, and you need to role play with somebody like Bobby or Cameron or you know, Dave Lawson or one of these people on here. You need to handle those. You need to be ready for those. Those are things you have to handle. But typically, it goes back to what I was saying. Tony Robbins says, kill the monster before it kills you, right? You set the stage, you give them all of the things. If I told you you're going to have seller's remorse or buyer's remorse before you have it, and I predicted you will have it, and I say, here's how you're going to have it or why you're going to have it, when you tell them that buyer's remorse is normal, it's going to happen. It's going to happen when you least expect it. It's going to be when your lender needs some more tax returns, and the home inspection came back and the AC is not working right. When you get this, you guys, I want you to understand, you're going to have buyer's remorse. And when you do, I want you to think back, why are you buying this house? Think about what you were at 10, these things, or selling your home, or is it priced too low? Is it price? All those objections. When you tell them you're going to have seller's remorse or buyer's remorse, guess what? When they have it, they go, Brian said this, what happened? And then they call you the next day and they say, oh my God, you believe it, last night we were laughing about it because Brian, you know what, we had it, Mary had it, or Joe had it. If they don't have it, it's not a big deal. But when they do have it and you didn't warn them up front that they were going to have some remorse in the transaction at somewhere, then it becomes a deal buster. But if you predict it's going to happen, and then when it does happen, you've prepared them to go back over and understand why they were doing these things, it's going to lower the stress level. That's another one. Objection handling scripts need to be your way of communicating to client that there is no fear in the decision. That's really what it's about. So be prepared. And then fear is what keeps people from making decisions. Uh-oh, I went dark.
I can still hear you.
Okay, good. Fear is what keeps people from making decisions. That the best objection handlings create the faith and works towards a solution. Okay, the solution. You've always got to be thinking about their outcome. What is the objection? Why did they give you that objection? And how is that going to do them a disservice in the process of what we're hired to do? So I can't tell you what these are. I just want you to understand objections are awesome if you learn how to embrace them. Okay. If you prepare your buyers for that remorse, like we went through that, and then internalize an objection handling script that helps you identify and recognize that the fear is upfront, so you can neutralize it quickly and work with them or work through it with your clients to the better outcome. I can't tell you guys how important, when you hear the objection, you don't answer it right away. You really use it as a way of understanding where they're coming from, hear it, give it back to them, and then find out how important it is. What's really holding them back from making the offer? What's really holding them back from listing with you? What is really? Because when you're good at asking those probing, open-ended questions, you're going to find out. You know, I know I learned the hard way, and I'll end with this. If you lead with a listing presentation of all the things you're going to do for them, you're going to wow them in your presentation, and you really focus in on your ability to hold the best open houses possible. Like you pride yourself on open houses, and they're internalizing, oh my God, I hate open houses. in their brain, but they've never told you how they feel about open houses, and you go on and on about how well you do them, they're not going to choose you because there's not an agreement there, right? So you have to ask the question, hey, before I talk about the next section of my listing appointment, how do you guys feel about open houses? Oh, we hate them. Great, we don't need them. Move on.
Right.
That's going to be a huge objection that you have to overcome. I lead with, there's 3 things I don't need that you think I need to sell your home. 1, I don't need a sign in your front yard. It helps people find your home, but I don't need it. How do you guys feel about a sign? You know what? I'm glad you asked, Brian. We're going through a short sale. We really don't want our drama brought out to the neighborhood. We don't want everybody to know we're selling because it's hard on us right now. We're going to have to move our family. So you have to find, where's the pain point? How do you feel about marketing to all your neighbors? And how do you feel about these things? And when you ask them up front, they'll either give you the go ahead or not. And then what you're going to do is you're going to align yourself with some things that you normally wouldn't do, but you're going to give them a concierge service up front. And then you can remove the things. How do you feel about a lockbox? We hate them. Great. How do you feel about a lockbox? We love them. You just got to find out. And I would say that you tailor all of your presentations to find out what the pain point is and what you really need to know to really win the client over. And it all is through objection handling. So that's it.
Brian, that was absolutely fantastic. And the stuff you were saying there too, you guys, you're talking about working on a different level or different class of clientele. That's how you guys are going to be able to break into luxury, or you're going to be able to move up your clientele, is having the knowledge and the scripts and the way to answer questions in a way that is best aligned with what they're doing. And then always, like Brian, you were saying there, always listen, confirm what they say, agree with what they say, no matter one way or the other, and then you can formulate the response or the objection handle. That's just absolutely great stuff, Brian. I mean, a lot of nuggets there that we could all go back through and listen to again. One thing that picked me out there, role playing. You mentioned role playing with us. I know a lot of groups are doing it now. We're also doing it. We have a Zoom open to anyone that's in our group on Monday, that we're doing role play. We're doing script work, all of that stuff. So just great stuff. Dave, I seen you chimed in there. Dave Lawson from Park City. Tell us a little bit about your objection handling, what you have written down.
Okay, so I did the same thing. I put some notes together, but what I want everybody on the call today to understand is, raise your hand. I wish I could see the 100 or the 69 or the 78 of us that are on this call. I wish I could say, who loves objections? And I want everybody to raise their hand. And you're going to go, well, why would you love an objection? And you have to understand that when people give you objections, I want you to completely think about objections differently, everybody. First of all, I love objections. And in my mind, I'm like, great, they gave me an objection. The contract, I'm almost ready to get the contract signed, as opposed to, oh no, they want to reduce the commission. They want to maybe this or they. And the thing is, gang, there's about 10 objections. If you're listing homes, Matt, if you list homes, how many objections can a seller give you? It's less than 10, right? I have a friend in the business. What will you cut your commission? Will you, whatever, right? And so it's not rocket science. But the first thing is, think of the theory. When you get an objection, you're almost ready to get the contract signed. So what do you do? And you can't just say this, you have to believe it. So if Cameron asks me, David, will you whatever the objection, I go, Cameron, I'm so glad you brought that up. You want to talk about commissions? That'll be one of the very first things we talk about when I meet you today at 4 o'clock. And is there any other is there anything else that you have that you're concerned about or anything? And then you ask that. What makes you nervous about selling your home? It's asking questions, right? So what is the process of every objection? So write this down. One, I'm so glad you brought this up. Number two, repeat it back. Oh, so you're concerned about commissions? Great. And you say it like that, great. That'll be one. And then the objection handler is, that'll be one of the first things we talk about when I meet you at 4 o'clock, right? Then what? Then you ask the next question or you close. And the thing is it's so simple. Every single objection that you get, this is how you handle it. Not sometimes, but all the time. And then when you go out and you meet them, and by the way, I love what both Brian said. And Brian, I want to talk to you because what you said was some of the best stuff that I've never heard before. And, you know, I've been studying sales for 25, 30 years. And what Brian just shared with all of you guys, that was freaking gold. So go back and listen to it. Take the notes. I mean, you know, and Brian, you know, he didn't just come up with that. He hired a coach for 5 years to help him develop that. And I know that cost you more than, you know, a few bucks, right? And he is giving this to all of you of being part of our tribe, right? Okay. But, and then the other thing is Cameron role playing. If you guys don't, you will never know how to answer objections really effectively unless you practice and role plan. Cameron just gave me, and I wrote it down, but what time is it and how do we get on it, Cameron? Monday?
So it's at noon. It's noon Monday Eastern time. So that would be 9 a.m. Pacific. And we do that again just so that everyone can get connected. But we're doing it, and it's just the same way we were doing this again in the exact same way in 2009, 2010, when things were slowing down and agents were just trying to get more creative. It's accountability, it's role play, it's scripts, it's you know, we're creating another family. So Monday mornings you can all get fired up with us and get ready for the week. So we're really excited about that. To be part of it.
Yeah. Will you put how they do it? Put it in the chat. Okay, but then I want you to write something else down. If you're on a presentation, I don't care if it's a listing presentation. And by the way, I use the word presentation to all of you, but we do not present to clients. Nobody wants to go on it. Nobody wants to have a listing presented to them, right? So it's a consultation. But if I say listing consultation, you guys don't really understand sometimes what I mean, right? So when you're on a listing presentation or you're on a buyer's presentation or consultation, write this down. The natural outcome of a great presentation is a contract signed.
Awesome.
Right? So if you practice and role play and you know your scripts and you know your objections and you practice and you practice and you practice. I love what they said at EXPCon, and I said it last week, but it was so important that I heard it. I'm going to repeat it. They said, gang, we're in a business right now that is skills-based. Yes or yes, right? It's all about the skills we have right now. And what they said is you only have two choices. Number one, you can talk to way more people, or you can practice your scripts and your presentations. And you will, and you know, if you practice and you get good at this, it's you know, if you learn how to fish, you can feed yourself forever, right? Otherwise, you're always going to be making twice as many phone calls to actually get the same results. So why wouldn't we all want to get better and get better fast? And I have a saying that I've said for decades and decades. It's not about perfection. It's about progress. We need to get a little better. And if you practice a little bit, Cam, right, you get a little better, and you practice a little more and you get even better. And pretty soon, you know, you're pretty dang good, right?
Well, even going off that, believe it or not, with progress, one of the things that a lot of agents, especially younger agents, were relating it to directly. Everyone here on this call is going to laugh because it doesn't connect with us as much. But video games these days, they're all about progress. And kids when they were younger and growing up, they're spending literally their entire lives building up online characters. I'm actually relating that now with some of our younger team members, and it clicks so well. That's like you just want to add one little point into something that they understand, and if you do that every single day, you can become level 99. You can become level master, where you can then go do the things, and they relate to that instantly. So that's great point there, Dave. Is that continuing to do progress, continue moving forward, and loving objections. I mean, you have to love no's. If you don't love no's, you're not going to seek them out, and then you're not going to be able to get to the yeses.
Yeah, and one last thing. You need to track your numbers, right? If it takes you, I tracked my numbers. Now, this was before we had lead sources and all that, but 108 people. I talked to 108 people, I get one deal. If I want to do one deal, I can talk to a year, I can talk to 108 people. If I want to do one a month, I only have to talk to 108 people a month. If I want to do a deal this week, I talk to 108 people. It's simple as that. Everything is math, right? But then you have to think of your mindset. So is your mindset that you failed 107 times or that on the 108th you won, right? So you got to remember every no gets you closer to a yes. So I don't want to take any more time, but thank you. And I'm going to pick Matt.
That's good. That's good. No, and mindset's key, you guys. Before we let you jump on there, mindset is key. And if you are tracking your numbers, right, it gives you a way to identify that while you're putting in the effort, while you're doing the work, while you're putting up those points in your different, skill trees, right? If you can track your numbers, you can actually watch those numbers decline, where it goes from 250 calls or 250 contacts per client to 100 contacts per client to 75. And you can continually track it down and down all the way until you get to a point where you go, I'm stuck. What do I do next? And then obviously you come back to the top producer panel and you ask us, and then we can give you the next steps. But Matty Battiata, the best in the West. What are some of the objections that you're seeing with the sellers? Good morning.
Yeah.
Why don't you go through that with us?
Sure. So, the truth is, I was just thinking about this while I was listening to you guys. It was all really good stuff. I really get so few objections, is the truth. And I think that's because, so I want to backtrack a little bit. Years ago, I would go out on so many listing appointments. I got tired of doing it, right? And I did a lot of marketing, so I got a lot of calls, and I went on a lot of listing appointments. At one point, I even hired a driver to drive me around San Diego, because it was exhausting to have to drive around and navigate all day. I would go out on 7 or 8 listing appointments in a day. And so then I thought, you know what, I'm really tired of doing this. So this is going to date me a little bit, but this was years ago. I basically did a listing presentation. I made a video. It was like a 15-minute video, and I had it really professionally done, and I had it on a VCR tape. And I would have somebody in my office or me deliver out the tape in one of those free FedEx envelopes out to the house. And I would tell them, am I frozen? No, good. Anyway, I'm going to have this delivered out to you, and do me a favor, watch the video, because it'll save a bunch of time. I know you're busy. Your time is valuable. If you can just watch that video before I come out, it'll save a bunch of time, because I won't have to give you the big dog and pony show and, tell you all about my background and what we're going to do to market the house. I can instead just focus on your property and answer any questions that you have. So I would have that video sent out. And when I would get to the house, the first thing I would ask them is, hey, did you get a chance to watch that video? And hopefully they said yes. But believe it or not, if they said, we didn't, I would say, you know what? Oops, my phone's ringing here. Sorry. I'd say, you know what? I'm going to look around the house, and I have a few calls to finish. Why don't you guys just take a seat and watch the video? It's only like 10 minutes long, because that's how badly I didn't want to have to give the presentation, right? So and it worked great, right? Because then after they watch the video, I'd say, so, usually I'd get to the house, I'd say, do you guys get a chance to watch the video? They go, yeah, it was incredible. It was great, and I'd say, did you have any questions? No, we're ready to go. That was the whole presentation. It was like a 2-minute presentation. So even to this day, I try to give them so much information as far as like a pre-listing packet and, so much information ahead of time that when honestly, I know this might sound crazy to some people, but I get out to the listing, I very rarely have to go through any objections. Maybe it's about, talking about where they're going to price that house. That's really about it. So, I mean, when I used to work a lot of expired listings and for sale by owners, yes, I would go toe to toe with them. And yeah, I can share the video. It's on my YouTube channel. But at any rate, when I used to work expireds, I think I really have to really isolate and overcome objections. I think the biggest objection that I run up to now is just getting in the door, setting the appointment, right? But I think that my point is that you want to give them so much information about what you do and what makes you different before you get out to the appointment, that when you get there, they're already sold. I mean, I still have a little quote on my email signature from Peter Drucker, who's the father of modern management. He says the aim of marketing is to make selling superfluous. And I think that's just the best quote, because if you market yourself well enough and you have things that make you unique to a seller or a buyer, they're already sold when you get there, right? So that's what I have to add. I think there's a lot to be said for figuring out how you can be different than the people you're competing with. Mm-hmm. And it changes all the time depending on the market. So that, and then spending some time creating a marketing plan for yourself, whether it's your website or things you send out ahead of time, or the marketing that you do to get sellers to call you. So that when you get them on the phone and you get out there to meet with them, they are pre-sold. So you don't have to sit there and go through multiple objections. So that's my 2 cents. But yeah, that video that I had that video done in like 2003. And the guy that did it for me was a former weatherman here in San Diego. And the only thing I've done over the years is I've re-recorded my parts because I don't look the same as I looked in like 2003. so I've just dubbed in parts for me, but he's still the same. And it's an incredible video. It still works. Yeah.
I was gonna say, everybody, that you had to jump on the YouTube and watch it, because the original had the long hair with Matt, right? It was the old. No, I'm just kidding, everybody. But yeah, absolutely, you guys.
Matt, maybe you can put your YouTube channel in the chat.
I want to party with that
put
guy.
your YouTube in the chat. Yeah, exactly. Now, I think everybody, though, if you listen to really what Matt was saying there, he went right back to kind of what Brian was really, putting forth, is that answering the questions before they become objections is so paramount. It's so key. And I think that was probably the biggest piece of Brian when you brought that up earlier, is the more that you can work with them and talk with them and build rapport and build trust and answer their questions, or have a video, right? Like Matt was saying, have a video that answers all their questions. Mm-hmm. It allows you to completely sidestep and avoid the objection itself. So that's just absolutely huge. Karina, I would love for you to step in here and tell us some of the objections you're facing and how you're overcoming them. Take it away.
Absolutely. I love objections. Like, I live for them, from my kids on to my customers. Now my kids are grown, so I really don't get many objections other than what we're having for dinner for meeting out. But the thing is, I was trained when I was a teenager I sold timeshares at 16 to 19. I was their number one rep, and they really taught you how to overcome objections. And it has really taken me through all the careers that I've had over the years. So what they taught us was, you have to think of a hallway. So I have a hallway in my head when I meet with every client, whether it's on the phone or in person, and they have all these doors that are open. And my job is with each objection, I'm closing doors and closing doors and closing doors. Now, if I miss a door, I get all the way to the end of the hallway, I close that door and go in for my own close, that's when you lose your customer, or you have to reel them back in. So it makes you really think and listen. I think that's what Dave or Matt, one of you guys or both of you said about listening, and same with Brian. You really have to listen to the customer. I am great at, I'm Jersey, right? In Florida, Philly, Jersey. And so I like to overcome those objections as I get them, right? Hey, I don't like these windows. What don't you like about the windows? Well, they're older. Okay, great. That's a great thing to upgrade later. You'll save yourself money on insurance and on your utility bill, but that's typically not something when the sellers will take care of unless there's a leak. So boom, we've handled that objection. We move on. So let's talk about the objections I'm hearing real life right now in this downward turn market that we're in, right? So let's face it, the interest rates have gone up, and the conversations I'm having with my sellers, right, is that, hey, listen, and I just had this conversation and it's scripted. It's the same thing every time I talk to one of them. When COVID came through and the market went sky high, the buyers had shock with the pricing. They had price shock, right? They didn't know what to do. They're paying $200,000 more for a house that they never thought they even wanted to pay full price on. Now my sellers are having price shock because now we're going down in price, right? We have to do price reductions if we're sitting too long, no matter how much marketing we're doing. And so when they say, but the house down the street, and this lady brought this up today, so it was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath with a pool and sold for $749, and we're a 5-bedroom, 3-bath with a 70-foot dock. And why are we priced at $795? And our deal just fell apart today, which it did. And so I had to explain to her that those numbers no longer count. That was before we hit 8%. That was at 6% the guy bought. And quite frankly, if you had been on the market sooner, that would have been your buyer. So you have to have those conversations. I'm not going to lose her listing. I just have to bring her to reality. And that's the reality. A lot of objections is just having a real conversation with them. If I'm with a seller at the listing table, I'm like, Matt, I don't get objections. They're ready to sign with me. However, I've made them look at my social media. They've been referred to me, even if they're a cold lead, they're looking, they know me before I walk in that door. I always ask them, are you sure you want to sell your house? Very important question. Because how many times have you listed someone's house, you've made them do upgrades, you've repainted things, the house looks fantastic, you write a really great narrative and they're like, I don't know if I want to sell now. Well, it's too late, we're moving forward, right? So if you ask them that, you're never going to get that objection. I don't know if I want to sell my house now. So you can get through that. So I know what the objections are. Most of you probably already know what the objections are because you hear them all the time. So and if you don't, that's why getting on with Cam and doing the practice will help you understand what those are. I like to hit them in the forehead with it ahead of time. So they're not even getting a chance to go through that door. We're going to knock it out ahead of time. So it's very important. And with the buyers, they're having shock because they can no longer afford that $950,000 house with $400,000 down because it's now a $4,000 payment. Just happened to one of my clients. Now they're looking at like a $400,000 or $600,000 house, and it's not apples to apples anymore. So we're having to talk about what they need to do. So one of the things we're doing now, scripted, is that I have this great lender. In fact, I put the Godfather ringtone to her because she'll take me out in a transaction if I get in her way. And she is offering a 2-to-1 buy down rate. So you can go from 8% down to 6% in the first year, 7%, and then up to 8% on the third year. And it only costs a seller about 2.5% to 3%, depending on the numbers. And I'd have to get the lender to work it out. Would that be something you would like me to negotiate on your transaction? Now I can get someone in that $940,000 house. On the flip side, this lady is waiting for the lender whose her deal just died today. And we're trying to go back to the same buyer with a 2-to-1 buy down. It's cheaper to do that than 3 more price drops. So there's ways you can put your scripts together to handle your objections. So I don't do like long scripts. I like little short, I call them Karina lines. And a lot of my agents will write them down. I have a bunch of little lines that I use, and they're all scripted and they're used over and over and over again. But it's things that make sense. It's conversation. Like, I don't want to sound scripted. and I don't want to memorize anything. I want to talk the way I speak in my personality. So I can take a bunch of stuff that Brian talked about, but I would have to then make it Karina style, right? And so anyone on this call should definitely remember, you still have to put it in your personality, because we love Craig, but I can't talk the way Craig did. Although I did go to school in Philly for college, but I grew up in Jersey. So, you know, we got a little more mafia on our side of the river, but, but really, it's really important to overcome objections. You're using your personality. And if it's not your personality, then you have to step back and practice until you figure out what those words really are that make it roll off your tongue. But it will not roll off your tongue if you don't practice, practice, practice.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And you know, one thing to bring up there, you guys, and something that Karina really was pushing on, and we're feeling it here with all of our clients, is motivation, right? You're digging into motivation. And if you go back to what is the objective of the appointment, or what is the objective of the call, it's to build rapport, it's to build trust, but really it's to find out motivation and qualification, right? Motivation and qualification. Yeah, go ahead, David. Oh, sorry, did you not jump in there? No worries. But really, you got to go back and you're finding those two things. And the objections are just challenging, or maybe they're harder questions. That's all they are. They're not no's. They're just questions that the clients have. And you can find those out through finding their motivation and their qualifications. So Craig Lurch out of Philly. Now tell me, I know you have a little bit different with your objection handlers, a little bit more direct, right? Being that Philly blood, right? But tell us, what are you hearing and what are you doing differently, and how are you handling them?
I don't think it's the Philly blood. I just think it's being who you are. It's being who you are. You can't be Cam. You can't be Brian. You can't be David. You can't be any Karina. Trust me. Karina's got her great Karina lines. I got my Craigisms. Okay. The point is, we are who we are. You got to be who you want to be. People are going to work with you because you are you and how you are. You're going to have people swim to you, and you're going to have people swim away from you. If they're swimming away from you, let them go, because if you grab them, they're only going to drown with them. How many of you had a seller you wish you could get rid of? It is so fun firing those sellers. You're like, damn, that was 3 months of aggravation I wish I didn't have. If you did your homework in the beginning, you understand they're not your ideal client. Refer them to somebody else who might be. We've said a lot of things. We can all understand the same thing. Remember something. We have 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use them in proportion. We need to learn about what they're going on. And I actually say, look, I'm going to ask a lot of questions. Usually I'm using my ears and my mouth in proportion. My wife doesn't think so. But at the same time, all I want to do is try to get information from you, because it's like going to the doctors. And the more I get, the more I'm able to give you feedback. And as we go through that, remember, there are only so many objections. There's like a book that was written. If we all wrote down the objections, the top 100 objections we've got, I'll guarantee you 75 of them are the same. Words might be a little different, but I guarantee you they're all the same. And when I first got in the business, I was taught by Alan Dom, who's done billions and billions of dollars of real estate, and we call him Philadelphia almost, because he's done so many condos down there. He said, Craig, every objection you get, write it down. Every objection you get, write it down, because then what you need to learn it. And then also, you've heard me talk about this, the DISC personality test. Not everybody is the same. Some people are direct. Some people are the party of the life. Some people are very nurturing, and you got to talk quieter to them like a grandmother. Other people are very analytical, never use the word bout, one exact stuff. So what you do is you learn every one of those objections, but you learn 4 or 5 responses to every one of those objections that you write out, you memorize, and you do them in each personality trait. So now all of a sudden you have one objection that now ultimately has 20 responses depending on the personality trait and how many times they keep asking the question. Understand, to get the rabbit out of the hat, you've got to put the rabbit in the hat. Put the rabbit in the hat, understand it, and go from there. The other thing that I always ask when somebody asks a question like Karina says is, why are you asking that question? Where did that come from? And when a buyer or seller calls me, the first thing I always say to them, what's making us have this conversation? Why is real estate on the top of your head? Why? There's some underlying reason. And what is that underlying reason? I need to know. Oh, I feel like spending money. That's not it. We're getting married. Okay, you want to get married. You don't want to live in mom and dad's basement. I get it. So you got to figure out why they're in this situation. Why are we talking there? Why are we having this dialogue? Then go into what are the processes. I always ask them, what are the top 3 scariest things you're thinking about in this process that can take place? And what are the top 3 things you're looking for in a realtor through this process? Because now I can code to them and I can work towards their needs or their fears versus just guessing. And I always ask, have you talked to another realtor? Yeah, we had somebody in last week. So why am I here and why didn't you list with them? And stop talking. The one who talks next loses. Find out. They're going to tell you exactly why, and then don't go there. You might go the same rabbit hole they do. So again, there's scripts, there are dialogues. Everyone you hear, write them down, practice them. I've got them memorized now. I call them Craigisms. We've talked about scripts. We've talked about practicing. It's like swinging a golf club. It's like being a chef. It's like driving a car. Your brain needs to subconsciously answer because then it makes it just sound like a conversation. It's not a script. So that's all the ROG's got today. Real estate outstanding guy.
Real estate outstanding.
I like it.
No, and that's great. The thing about that I've learned with the DISC profile, Craig, because I've done the same thing, is it's about listening. If you listen to your client, they will quickly tell you where they are on that profile, and then you can go down there, go down what the things that triggers them or that it encourages them, that it makes them happy, right? It could be analytics for the analyticals, it could be whatever it may be, but listening is key. Now, writing down your objections, that changed my business. When I was a young little lad here, 12 years ago, I would get stuck on objections and I would just ignore them and go on to the next call doing the expired phone call thing. When I started writing down my objections and figuring out how to solve the puzzles is when my career was able to completely change, and I was able then to become from more value. I was able to answer the questions, the objections before they even came out. Because after you start writing down your objections, you guys, you'll find that really what the objection is just a question, right? It's something they don't know. And when you know that everyone's out here doing the same thing, like Craig said, like Karina said, there's only about 5 real objections that you're going to get all the time. Once you understand why they're asking those questions, then you can formulate your whole talk, your whole call, your whole appointment around how we're able to solve those problems. And those are really key for me. A couple of the scripts that I wanted to go over, I wrote down.
Let me
Yeah,
ask
buddy,
something.
of course, absolutely.
Write this one down, okay? I've used it forever. I say usually Mr. or Mrs., especially with a buyer, and we're out right before we go out look at. I say, I have a question to ask you, and I need your permission. Is it okay with me, after we see each house, if I ask you, do you want to buy it? And let me explain why I'm asking that question. Because some people need to be asked to make a decision. Some people need it brought to the frontal lobe of their mind. It's not that I'm pressuring you. It's just that I'm trying to open your mind. And you will be amazed at how many clients I started asking that. And that's why I started asking it to them was, yeah, I want to buy it. But unless I ask them, they won't tell you. So the biggest thing is I always say, is it okay if I ask you this in the future? Because now you're not pressuring them. So after every house, so do you like it enough? Do you want to say yes to the address? Do you want to say yes to the dress? Have fun with it, but ask the question, and it makes them want to get engaged. And then you start figuring out the why and why nots. So just as an idea, sorry for jumping in there on your brain.
Hey, actually, I want to jump
No,
in
no,
on
not
that
at
for a
all.
second.
Karina,
Cam?
go ahead, and then Brian,
Yeah.
Brian, go ahead. Karina, go ahead, and then Brian.
I personally, when I go show a property, I bring 2 sheets of the MLS, right? I have one for me that's private and one for them that's public. So as soon as we walk through the door, I hand them their paper, and I try to take turns, husband and wife, who's getting it. And then I always see who's handing it off to who, so I know who to hand on the next house. And after we're all through the whole house and we're standing in the kitchen before we leave, I have my pen out, and on the back of the paper, I write the wife's name, I put a line down, and I write the husband's name, and I draw a line across. I just made a T, right? And I look at them and I say, hey, listen, I'm going to say, Craig, I want to know on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 is get me the F out of this house, And number 10, Karina, write me the offer. Where does this house stand for you? And you might say, oh, geez, Karina, I'm going to give it a 7. I write a 7 there. Then I go over to the buyer. Hey, Mary, on a scale from 1 to 10. Oh, no, I'm good with my husband's number. Oh, no, you two are 2 separate people. I need to know, you have to have your own number because you have to make sure they give you each a number because one of them will kill your deal. So you have to know where they're at. Mary, where do you see yourself? 0 is get me the F out of this house. Number 10, write me the offer. Well, I'm going to give it a 5.5. All right, 5.5. I go, are you sure these are your numbers? Yes. Then I go back to Craig. Craig, what is it that you did not like about this house that did not make it a 10? Well, I didn't like it how close it was to the street. I didn't like the neighborhood that I had to drive all the way to the back. I didn't like the traffic light. Whatever it is, I write down all his objections. Mary, why did you give it a 5.5? Well, it didn't have a big enough kitchen and I really need a big kitchen because, you know, our family's big and blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. Then I take the paper right in front of them and I rip it in half. And I go, I guess this one's going in the trash. It's very important you rip it in half. It has to be a little dramatic. And then their faces bug out. And they go, why'd you do that? I go, because if it's not at least an 8, we're never coming back to revisit this house. So I'm not going to waste my time. It's not a big enough kitchen. It's too close to the street. Let's move on. And I completely get rid of the house. And now it's no longer on the table. Now, if they go home that night and they start laughing at what I did, and they're like, actually, maybe we could live at that kitchen. They work out all their little objections on that house as I'm hauling ass over to the next house. I've never gone back and sold a house that I ripped that paper on because their objections came out right there at the end. I'm not leaving that house as showing a house to someone without knowing their objections. So I know how to overcome and get them to the correct house. I showed a guy 3 houses. I kept telling him, drive from Orlando, come see ours over at the beach. We're too different. We're less than an hour away. I'm too busy. He was like 24 years old. I'm too busy. Okay, whatever. He didn't like the first house because the 2 neighbors looked like trash. So he said, I'm not buying that house. Next house. I'm not buying this because, again, I said, you need new construction. Took him to 2 new construction sites. I took him to the best one last. We closed it. We were done. I needed that guy in a new construction house. You'll know quickly if you can flesh out those objections. And mine's dramatic, but it works every freaking time. And I have my agents now doing it too. And you will get through the bottom of it. Because as the market goes down, the more inventory you're going to have. So you got to be able to flush through showing 10 or 15 homes to people. And you don't want to have to be trying to figure out, well, now which one did we like the best? By the time I'm done with them that day, we might be down to 2 houses to make a decision on. That's a really great way to overcome those objections.
That's a good one. And it also allows them to remember the homes they like and forget the houses that they don't, right? Move on from it. Brian, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, piggybacking on that and Craig, what they said. So I reverse engineered all that. And what I did was I get to the front door and I let them know, first of all, hey guys, I don't own this house and you won't offend me if you don't like it, but I need to know what you do like and what you don't like about it. And before I get to the first house, I've already asked them to prepare their individual wish list. So the wish list that Karina was just talking about eliminates those 5.5, 6, and 7s. If you really do your homework up front, you're only going to show them the things that the houses, and there might only be 2 or 3. I prefer to show one house and it's a 10 for both of them if I do my homework up front. But sometimes you have to do and you go through that exercise. So it's really important objection handling is you kill that negativity and you invite the feedback. You need to know that, hey, I don't own this house. You're not going to offend me if you don't like it, but I do need to know what you like about it. But the thing I wanted to bring up the last couple of minutes, I want to hear other people's version of this. The number one objection we're all hearing right now from buyers is we want to wait. I think we're just going to wait. I love that objection. I say, great. That is an easier way for me to help you because we don't need to be looking at properties right now while you're waiting. But let me ask you, what are you going to wait for? Because a prepared buyer doesn't know when the deal of a lifetime is going to come across their desk. And if you sit on the sidelines and wait, chances are you're going to wait past the best deal for you. So I want to position you to be a buyer that can respond overnight to the best deal that comes across our desk when we least expect it. So let's go back and revisit what you want to wait for, right? And then handle that and do a great consultation. Okay.
Oh my goodness. Brian Yarborough. So everyone go back and listen to that again, how you handle that objection. That is fantastic, right? You agree with them, you're on their side, you heard what they want to do, you're saying it back to them, and then you're asking them, you're replying to them with, what are you waiting for? Now, I had a couple of my Craig-isms or Karina-isms that I wanted to throw out there, you guys. One of them is with all of my buyers. One of the things I tell all of them, it goes right with Karina was saying, I say, hey guys, this is just my opinion. I will never be offended if you guys disagree with me. But my personality, I'm a little bit opinionated. I go into homes and I tell people what I think of them, even when we're walking through them. I know a lot of people say don't do that, but that's how I build rapport and trust. And you know, my knowledge of building and experience allows me to do that. But up front, I tell them, if I say something that you disagree with, maybe you like that little nook, or maybe you like something that I say, tell me immediately so I know. And it also, again, it just continues building that trust. So that's one of my favorites is, you know, my opinion is okay. I'm going to tell you it, but don't be offended. The other one right now is with our listings, we're having to do price reductions, consistent price reductions. Now I'm going back to our scripts of the expired days where we're talking about getting ahead of the market. And we do that by showing them a bell curve and where we are on the bell curve. And I do this, I draw it out on a white piece of paper. I draw a bell curve and I say, we are now down here. And in 10 days, we're going to be a little bit lower. In 20 days, we're going to be a little lower. We need to get ourselves priced ahead of this bell curve. That is my Camism for the price reduction spiel, right? It goes a little bit more depth than that. But yes, getting ahead of the market. Now, the other one though that we're seeing a lot of is the commission lower script, right? Everybody, I know it's 1 o'clock, so I'm going to be quick on this one. But the script that I always use when agents or when sellers tell me on the phone prior to our appointment that they want it at 2% or they want it at 1%, I have listings that I bring out, right? They're 3-up reports, so you guys probably can get that in your MLS. Of listings that have sold in the last 30 days, right? In this more different market that are at 3%. I also show them at 1%. And amazing, you guys, the separation of purchase price to list price on the 1% homes today here in our market, maybe not in all y'all's market yet, but in our market, they're, 8, 10, 12% off ask price. The 3% listings, they're like 97%. So when you have that objection, that is the first way that I handle it, is I just show them the different listings that are selling at the different percentages. And the best part about that, you guys, is that you get to prepare the listings that you present to them at the appointment, right? So you can always, exactly, commissions are negotiable. So that is something that the 2 biggest objection handlers that I have used throughout my career is presenting the difference of pricing. Throughout COVID, that was more challenging. But then also, like I said, with the getting ahead of the market with a downward trending market. So anyways, you guys, absolutely fantastic stuff. I learned some absolute nuggets. I hope everyone else did as well. We're going to be back next Thursday at noon every week with the top producer panel. So I hope everyone joins us again. Anybody have anything to say before we send off? No, we're always. I was going to ask everybody what their favorite pizzas were, but we're kind of late.
Favorite candy.
Come on, Craig, let's hear it.
Favorite candy. Brian, favorite candy.
Snickers.
Cam.
Favorite candy. I'm going to be weird and I'm going to say Good and Plenty's, those little licorice things that are covered in sugar.
I like that. Karina.
Anything chocolate.
Anything chocolate. David.
Of course, it's what is it called? $1,000 bar or whatever it's called.
You got it down.
$100,000 bar.
Oh, there you go. Matt.
Gotta be Reese's peanut butter cups. Everybody knows that.
There you go. Dre, I know you're in the bottom there.
Cameron, what's yours?
Dre, what is it?
Mine was Good and Plenty's. Dre, what is yours?
Oh, that's right.
Milky Way. I love Milky Way.
All right.
Yeah.
I love the Hershey with almonds frozen.
Yeah.
You got to freeze your stuff. And by the way, get the sour worms and make a really good lemon drop martini and float a sour worm in there. You're going to turn your whole party upside down. Go Birds.
Yeah. And everybody,
let's go, you guys. I love it.
You just got 7 or 8 different opinions on objection handlers. Take what you can't be all of us. Take something that you can use and try to practice. And like everybody said, put it in your words and you will close many more deals. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next Thursday.
Thank you.
See you next week, guys.
Bye.
All right. Bye, guys. Have a good Good week.